Why be stuck on 3 wheels when you can be on 4 wheels, maybe even 6? Become a subscriber to the Audrain Museum Network and you'll get further faster. Do it right now. Hit that button. To today's eyes, this might seem a very strange vehicle, but in the time and the place in which it was created, it was just the right product. This is a 1955 Messerschmitt 200 KR Kabinenroller. You might imagine that this shape seems relatively familiar, considering the fact that the car is called a Messerschmitt, and this does have the aspect of the cockpit of a fighter plane. In fact, the design came from a fellow named Fritz Fend, who was a Luftwaffe officer and an engineer who, after the war, developed an invalid carriage that he thought would be very useful for people who had been injured during the war. And the success of that with people who actually didn't have a disability made him realize that there was a real market for a basic transportation vehicle. He approached the folks at Messerschmitt, who of course, because of the regulations after the war, were forbidden to build airplanes and were looking for something to do with their factories, about building a car like this to his design. So they agreed with the proviso that it would be called a Messerschmitt, although they set up a separate company to build the cars. It was the Regensburg Stahl- und Metallbau, and it was built in the Messerschmitt factory in Regensburg. And they did it in a very interesting way. These are 191cc motorcycle engines with the typical motorcycle sequential gearbox and seats for 2. Now, this example is an export. How can you tell the export? It's got this really neat 2-tone trim on the outside, plus a clock, a heater, and a shade for the canopy. Because let me tell you, when you are in this vehicle in the sun, it can be rather toasty. Now, of course, you've got these wonderful sliding windows, fore and aft, very well upholstered seats, and as much of a comfortable environment as can be imagined when you're not walking or on a bicycle or scooter. These were very popular for a very long time. Production of these lasted from the early and mid-1950s through 1964, which is amazing to believe, when, of course, the time, especially in Germany, the Wirtschaftswunder had taken hold and everyone was really ready for a full-sized car. Not to mention the fact that for not much more money, you could buy a Volkswagen Beetle. So these came to the end of their useful life. Now, we have seen a resurgence in the microcar in some European cities, and it's inspired by what this vehicle was and intended to do, but in a very different way. So, what is it like to be out on the road in a Messerschmitt Kabinenroller? Let's find out. Piloting the Messerschmitt is very much an exercise in focus. Not concentration, but focus. The yoke will not only take the vehicle exactly where you look at where it should go, but actually where you think. Now I'm coming up on some pretty big bumps in the road here, and it's going to be quite interesting to see what happens. It's going to want to go its own way, so this will be a very exciting moment indeed. So let's check it out. To pilot one of these around a city would be both an opportunity and a challenge. Because although it is very darty, the turning ratio is not terribly small. And on cobblestone streets typically found in European cities, you would not have much opportunity for smooth transiting. And it's also, of course, the fact that this vehicle works very hard all the time. This is an export model with the two-tone paint and all that comes with it. What I am missing at this moment, of course, is the sunshade for the canopy. The sliding windows do help to provide some ventilation, but most of the air comes in at my ear, so my face is pretty warm, although my ears are not terribly warm at the moment. And it is something that, again, requires a great deal of concentration because the steering is much like using a tiller. As soon as you move, the vehicle turns. And it's there's also not much of a suspension involved in this car. And so you are very much connected to your environment. I think that probably the pilots that flew in Messerschmitt aircraft had a few more creature comforts than the driver of this vehicle enjoys. I think that there were at least some air vents to keep the air moving through the cockpit. You could really use sort of a vent right here in the top of the bubble, but that would have made something slightly awkward in case of rain. Now, of course, driving this in the rain would be an adventure again all of itself. It's remarkable when you can see so many small, usually electric, modern microcars in cities. Citroën, Fiat, Ligier. There's just a host of them. And they're quite marvelous things because young drivers can use them before they actually get their full driver's license. And of course, they are restricted solely to the city. You cannot take them on any sort of a highway. And that's fine. And of course, they park in the space of a motorbike, which makes them very useful in European cities as well. And so vehicles of this type are enjoying quite a resurgence, one which could not possibly have been imagined a few decades before. Finding the sweet spot for driving can be a bit of a challenge. As a basic transportation tool, the Messerschmitt Kabinenroller is not tragic, but it is something that would be quite unacceptable by today's standards. And cruising along here at a steady 20 miles per hour, it is remarkable what the result can be. All I can say is that the world of microcars has mightily progressed since the days of this vehicle. Well, I have to say it's a lot more comfortable being in here in the garage than out there on the road in this. But, you know, it's amazing the qualities that this car has really sort of creep up on you. And if you could use it in a really calm and controlled environment, it might be a lot of fun. Driving this on a city street? I don't think so, certainly not me.